CDK4/6 inhibitor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everybody's very interested in the oral SERDs just because of the ease of administration.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I wanted to actually ask you about these new agents. Do you think that the combination could actually be much better than the standard of care that we have at the moment? I think many of them are being evaluated against palbociclib with letrozole or anastrozole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's the comparison that we're actually currently in the process of trying to get a couple of trials activated.
Okay.
Either in the metastatic setting or even in the adjuvant setting.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the advantage. I think there's, when people have failed on an aromatase inhibitor, for example, they often will switch to Faslodex and the CDK4/6 inhibitor versus staying on the same aromatase inhibitor and adding the CDK4/6 inhibitor. But of course, the Faslodex is injectable, and it's sort of visits and it's uncomfortable. So I think there's a lot of interest in the oral selective estrogen receptor degraders that are much more practical.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then I also wanted to ask you about another hormonal treatment that is being developed for hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative patients. So it is a selective androgen receptor modulator. I think the name is enobosarm. Sorry if my pronunciation is not great. So it is evaluated as a monotherapy for metastatic breast cancer patients at the moment. Yeah. I don't know if you have any thought about this other mechanism of action. I think it's an oral drug.
I don't know much about the androgen receptor targeted therapies, to be honest with you.
That's okay, don't worry. It was just in case you knew. And then the other questions I wanted to ask you is, do you know if for metastatic hormone receptor positive HER2 negative patients, do you know if the drug alpelisib in combination with fulvestrant, if it is prescribed often to these patients?
What's the name of the drug?
Alpelisib. So the brand name is Piqray.
Oh.
I think
it's a PI3 kinase inhibitor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know it showed activity, and I've not been familiar with any patients going on it, but I think it's something that's sort of in the armamentarium as second or third line treatment for patients with metastatic hormone receptor positive breast cancer. But I think it's a reasonable option, particularly in a patient that the oncologist is hesitant to switch to chemotherapy for. And they do tend to try it, but I don't think they have a real long. Once they get to that, I don't think they're seeing a lot of long progression-free survival, and those patients at some point, if they're eligible for it, are going to end up on chemotherapy.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other agent I wanted to ask you about that is an emerging therapy at the moment. So it's the AKT inhibitor capivasertib. I think it's been developed by AstraZeneca.
Right.
And it's also being combined with fulvestrant in advanced hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative breast cancer.
Right.
So, I know that the other AKT inhibitor that has been evaluated, ipatasertib, has been negative, the trials.
Right.
So, I was just wondering if you had any different thoughts maybe about this one, or do you still think that it might be negative?
I don't have any thoughts about that. Haven't really looked at that very carefully. I know there's some ETCTN early clinical trial group It's sponsored by the NCI, looking at drugs like that, but I'm not at all familiar with seeing them in use in the clinic.
Yeah, that's okay.
So maybe once we get some patients on some of these trials, once we get them open, we'll have more to say.
Yeah. Great. And then finally, I had some questions for you about triple-negative breast cancer. So if we start with the early stage population, can you explain to me how do you treat these patients?
Yeah, so again, unless they're very small tumors, we tend to favor neoadjuvant therapy. And depending upon the patient and their, overall medical comorbidities and so forth, we tend to treat them either with adriamycin Cytoxan, followed by a taxane carboplatin combination. If they're a little more fragile, we tend to just treat them with taxane carboplatin alone and avoid the anthracycline. I think that now with some of the studies that just came out at ESMO on the use of neoadjuvant immune checkpoint blockade, that's probably going to become standard, combined with chemotherapy, then given adjuvantly. So I think that's going to be the new gold standard for neoadjuvant treatment for patients with triple-negative breast cancer. I think there's a lot of work yet to be done, particularly in figuring out which patients benefit significantly from adding the checkpointed blockade in the neoadjuvant setting, and also which patients benefit or do not benefit from giving more immune checkpoint blockade in the adjuvant setting. So that's a very exciting area, figuring out what the right biomarkers are, when to give the immune blockade, when to back off from it, when it's not helpful.
Yeah. Great. I guess it will be pembrolizumab, the one that receives the approval first, no?
Right. Yeah, and in the metastatic setting, there was a trial there was a positive trial for pembro and a positive trial for atezolizumab. Atezolizumab got an accelerated approval from the FDA, but this week, last week, Roche announced they were going to pull it for metastatic triple-negative breast cancer. I guess because they didn't have a confirmatory trial to give to the FDA.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess because I think atezolizumab, it was still ongoing. There was a trial ongoing with another chemotherapy backbone. I think it was like carboplatin, something like that.
Right.
I guess they might not still have the results from that, or maybe they have it and they are not looking very good. I don't know.
I happen to sit on the NCI's breast immuno-oncology task force, and one of the two of the recurring topics we discuss almost every month are what are the markers, what are the biomarkers that will tell us which patients do or do not benefit from immune checkpoint blockade, and the other one is what's the best chemotherapy backbone to add immune checkpoint blockade to. So I don't think we know the answers to those questions yet. Okay.
In the metastatic setting for triple negative, so I guess pembrolizumab has more use because it has been approved in combination with a lot of different chemotherapies.
Yeah.
Well, I guess now it's the only one available, but
yeah, that was one of the other keynote trials. I can't remember the number, but and again there was the atezolizumab with nab-paclitaxel. That was what was given the accelerated approval, and now that I guess it's going to be pulled. So I guess it's pembro plus chemotherapy of choice.
Yeah.
Because that trial used like 3 different chemotherapy backbones, and it's not clear. It wasn't designed to answer the question of which chemotherapy works best with pembrolizumab. of course the other option for triple negative breast cancers, and I think it may actually see more use